Good morning, and thank you for joining us for this webinar. My name is David. I'm pleased to be joined by Matt Taylor. Matt's co-founder of Common Ground, a digital marketing agency based in Oxford in the UK, and also Sam Medlicott, who's Common Ground's head of paid media. The format for today is Matt's going to be taking you through some of the common pitfalls to avoid, and there are many of those, and some strategies that you can implement to get the most out of your pay-per-click advertising with Google and help you to deliver the traffic and leads to hit your objectives. I know from our dress rehearsal that we ran last week that Matt's presentation is jam-packed with actionable tips and tactics that you'll be able to implement. We will have some time at the end of the webinar to run through any questions that you may have as well. And with Sam being on the call, it's a great opportunity for you to pick the brain of someone who helps Common Ground's clients to optimize their pay-per-click campaigns every single day. If you do have any questions as we go through the presentation, feel free to type them into the Q&A section, which you should be able to see at the bottom of the screen. If it's particularly pertinent to what Matt's presenting about at the time, it might be that we interrupt the presentation and cover it then, or it might be that we run through everything at the end. Just a couple of interesting points. When you signed up to the webinar, we asked you to a couple of questions. So first question was, how are you managing your pay-per-click advertising currently? And the second question was, how confident are you that your website will deliver enough leads to achieve your goals this year? It's interesting that 80% of people who said they are working with an agency for their pay-per-click activity were confident of achieving their goals or certain. And that compares to just 58% of people who are managing their pay-per-click ads in-house, and only 29% of people who aren't running pay-per-click ads currently. So why am I mentioning all of that? Clearly, the data would indicate there's a benefit to working with an agency who are experts in managing pay-per-click activities. So if you'd like to have Common Ground to provide a free audit of your pay-per-click setup, there'll be an opportunity for you to request one when you leave the webinar. There'll be an exit survey and just select, yes, I'd like to receive an audit of my pay-per-click activity. Even if you're not running one, it's a good opportunity just to chew the fat and just discuss your plans with the experts from Common Ground. Just a reminder, this webinar is being recorded. We'll send everyone a link to watch the recording and download a copy of the slide deck after the talk today. So that's enough from me. Matt, I know you've got a lot to cover, so I'll bring you in at this point.
Excellent, thank you, David. I'll be honest, this is really weird because I literally can't see any of you. So I will wildly gesticulate, but I can only see David and Sam at this point. So hopefully they're going to be nice and reassuring. So yeah, as David said, we're here to discuss the common mistakes that kill your Google ad campaigns and how to avoid them. If you notice I'm looking that way, that's because that's where my presentation is for me. So I apologise if it looks slightly weird. So what I'm going to cover in the next 45 minutes or so is a really quick introduction to me. We're not going to spend a lot of time on that at all. Some fundamental issues behind why Google ad campaigns don't work, some platform related issues. Quite frankly, I love talking about digital, so I haven't been able to limit it to 10. So there's some bonus issues I cheated at the end. Just say I think there's about 13 or 14 in total, and then if anyone's brave enough, we can do some FAQs, not FAQs, Q&A at the end. I should have probably proofread that on my agenda. So yeah, we're going to do question and answer at the end instead. This is a good start. As a starting point, the next slide is going to be quite ironic. So who am I and why you should listen to me? So an expert is a man who's made all the mistakes which can be made in a narrow field. I've just made an extra one today by having FAQ instead of Q&A on that slide, but I think it's quite a good definition of basically the benefit of working with digital marketing agencies, because realistically, you get the benefit of learning from, or the benefit of the experience of working with people who have done all of this before. They've seen it across multiple campaigns, multiple clients, and all of those kinds of things. And quite frankly, long time ago when I first started, I probably did make some mistakes, and I've learned from them, and I know how to kind of avoid those things going forward. So a really quick bit on me. So obviously I am the co-founder of Common Ground. As an agency, what we try and do is make the complex simple and only focus on the 20% that actually matters to unlock your growth. Realistically, in paid advertising, in any kind of digital marketing, there is a huge volume of stuff that you can do. But as with anything in life, there's about 20% of it that delivers at least 80% of the results. And that's where you really need to focus. And that's where we'll be focusing today. I've been doing digital for 14 plus years. worked with over 650 clients. So hopefully that proves that I know what I'm talking about and I'm worth listening to. As an added bonus on this webinar as well, you also get Sam, our head of paid media. She has even more experience than I do when it comes to paid advertising. So she's here to she'll happily answer any questions as we're going through in the chat. If you want to send a question in the chat, and she can answer it easily there. If not, I'll bring her in at various points just to add a bit more, I guess, flavour, background, experience into the proceedings. And definitely at the end, she'll be here to answer questions as well. And just in case you wonder the sorts of brands that we work with, here's a load of logos here that you can look at. So it's basically companies of all sizes, different budgets, different stages of their growth life cycles. So our experience is very broad across industry. That is the last thing I will say about us or me or our clients or anything like that. So cracking on with things. The first section I've titled Fundamental Issues That No Optimization Can Solve, because realistically, with the best will in the world, there are just some times when Google Ads will not work. It's not the right thing to be doing for somebody. And no matter how well you optimize the campaigns, they just won't work. So the first one, the first issue is, should you even be using Google Ads in the first place? We have people come to us, we have leads coming in where they come to us with a preconceived idea they want to do Google Ads. Everybody has heard of Google Ads. When you say CPC or you say PPC to people automatically think of Google Ads because it's their widest exposure. But it's not the only show in town, effectively. So I've limited this table to the most common ones we get asked about, but there's pros and cons for each of the different networks. So Google, obviously, the beauty of Google is there's lots of different options. There's lots of different tactics you can use within Google. Primarily, people think about it as the search advertising, everything you see in the search results. That's really high intent. And that's why people like Google Ads. Essentially, you can advertise against a keyword that you know theoretically should work, should find your audience. And it's got a really high possibility of converting. You can target different people at points of the journey. You can get quick results. You can run A/B experiments. You can measure the results really well. It integrates into Google Analytics. Obviously, it's the only platform that properly integrates into Google Analytics. Everything else, things like Facebook or LinkedIn, they use different metrics, and quite frankly, they don't like sharing all of the data that they get into Google Analytics either. So the real benefit, or one of the real benefits of Google, is being able to actively manage and actively or accurately understand your performance. But there are cons to it as well. So it is massively competitive in some industries. So I've seen cost per clicks at 25, 30, 40 pounds. Realistically, if what you're selling or your how much you've got to acquire a new lead, a new sale, doesn't work with the 40, 50 pound cost per clicks, and that's what your industry is. Google Ads will never work for you, certainly search ads. There's character restrictions, so you can't do the same advertising on Google as you can on Facebook, for example. Facebook is significantly more, you can get the message across a lot better in Facebook. You can use much better creatives in Facebook. Display can be a bit spammy. In fairness, it can be massively spammy as well. Display on Google Ads is, I would say, fairly terrible by comparison to some of the alternatives. You have really limited demographic targeting compared to the other channels and networks as well. So fundamentally, the first question that everybody should be asking themselves is Google Ads the right channel or platform for us to be using? And within that, is the individual tactic the right thing to be using as well? I won't go through all of these, but you'll get the deck afterwards so you can have a look as well. And then within Google Ads, obviously, it's selecting the right target or the right tactic, for your campaign as well. So as I mentioned, Google search ads, they're high intent, but they have high cost per clicks. It's incredibly easy to waste budget using search ads, and it's incredibly easy to set up badly as well. There's a lot of Google search ads look really easy to set up, but there's a lot of nuance, and you can waste budget by not realizing you have to limit things like location, time of day, all sorts of different settings that are to a certain extent hidden away. So it's really easy just to bash up an ad campaign, but really a lot more difficult to optimize it. As I mentioned, display and video, it's got incredibly low cost as a cost per click. So typically you can get it down to sub 10p cost per click. Realistically, it's probably 20, 30, 40p cost per click. You can reach a really broad audience. It's a really great way to reach or to get millions of impressions or hundreds of thousands of impressions. But at the same time, it's low intent. So when people see a display ad, they're not actively looking to purchase at that point, or they're unlikely to be actively looking to purchase. So it's much better as an awareness tool as opposed to a kind of direct lead gen tool. And unfortunately, Google Display, we see it all the time. You get a huge volume of spam clicks or accidental clicks, and there's reasons for that, which I'll show you later. Remarketing, really great. It's a really great tool. The thing with remarketing is the limitations are generally it's only as good as the audience you already have, because it will never create you a new audience. It's just advertising to the audience you already have. And if you set it up correctly, it can be really high intent. It can be a low cost per acquisition. It can really drive your conversions. If you set it up badly, it can do the exact opposite. You can effectively waste your budget. If you're targeting people who've already purchased something with the same product, they're not going to buy. They're not going to buy again, or they're unlikely to buy again. Or if you're targeting people who've gone to a particular page, which might be at the awareness stage of your funnel, and you're trying to drive them into a conversion, you're kind of missing out the entire middle of your funnel. So it won't work if you do things like that. Performance Max, which is a new one, it's a mix between search, display, video. It can work really well, generally has high intent. There's a lower management required. It's a lot of automation and a lot of kind of Google assuming and Google finding audiences for you. The flip side of that, you also have low control. And in reality, what we're finding and what most marketers are finding is it doesn't work for everybody. And it does take a little while to optimize. So the first couple of months, you can see things like cost per clicks vary wildly, conversion rates vary wildly as well. And the final one, if you're doing e-commerce, is shopping. So again, it's high intent, it's visual ads, there's a lot of automation, but it's actually relatively complex to implement and optimize, because you're optimizing the feed from your website as opposed to things largely within the ad platform itself. It's got a high cost per click, and quite frankly, it's a price comparison feature for a lot of people. So if you're selling the same product that 10 other people are, you're all doing Google shopping, somebody's going to most likely go with the cheap, or the first click will go to the cheapest person, or the cheapest value price, basically. So it can be a real kind of price comparison. And if you're not competitive in that way, again, it can be an easy way to kind of waste budget when you should maybe focus on search ads instead. So as I said, the first point is basically making sure that the platform is right for you. And once you're convinced that the platform is right for you, making sure that the tactic's right for you as well. And then obviously there's times when you would use the different tactics as well. So this is a kind of a classic funnel diagram here. Can I move this out of the way? Go away. Pop that up there. So here you can see there's different times we've kind of mixed this in with the other things that we do as well. But realistically, at the awareness stage, it's display advertising, paid social. So if that's what you're trying to drive, things like Google search, probably not the best thing for you because the cost per click's too high. The evaluation stage is kind of search ads and again, paid social. And then at the conversion stage, again, probably search ads and paid social and some remarketing. So again, it's considering platform, tactic, and then also what stage of the funnel you're trying to target as well. So quite commonly, we start working with clients and they'll come to us and the campaigns won't be focusing on a specific area or the tactic isn't right for what they're trying to achieve. So that's point number one. The second point is you haven't set a business focused campaign goal, or you've set the wrong ones. So another common error that we see with people is going back to those tactics that we see. So things like display, search, remarketing, they will set the same goals for absolutely all of them, despite the fact they're very different tactics, they're very different sorts of ad campaigns, and they're working at very different parts of the funnel. So here are essentially the 4 different areas where you can put campaign goals. So you've got awareness campaigns. These are the sorts of things that you should be tracking off the back of an awareness campaign. So impressions frequency, cost per click, cost per thousand, or just the volume of clicks, basically, depending on what you want to do. If your awareness is you want to then send somebody to your site, obviously clicks is important. If you're literally just trying to keep your brand in front of the most people possible, clicks isn't actually that important. And it can preserve your budget effectively. If you're confident you're getting in front of the right people and they're not having to click on your ad, it's actually useful that they don't click, because you can preserve your budget. And then there's a traffic goal as well. So if your goal is traffic, it should be click-through rates, cost per click, time on site, and bounce rates. So these are quality of the traffic, and these are how much traffic you're most likely to generate. The thing is, though, most people shouldn't be in these 2 areas. There's very few sites, especially if you kind of have if you're a commercially based business, if you're not kind of a charity, or you're not trying to just gain general promotion of something. Traffic and awareness, they shouldn't be metrics that you're focusing on. Everything should go on to, if you're an e-commerce site, sales. If you're a lead generation site, everything you should focus on is lead generation. It might be that there's parts of your funnel that you're tracking kind of the awareness. So if you've got display running at the top, set goals around impressions, frequency, clicks. If it's very much at the middle or the bottom of the funnel, what you need to be focusing on if you're a lead generation business is things like the volume of conversions, the conversion rate. They obviously impact the cost per acquisition overall. And realistically, the thing that a lot of people then don't move on to is what is the quality or the value of that lead that's brought in. So this can often be a disconnect that we see between marketing and sales teams. Is marketing are driving a huge volume of leads, and the sales team are getting the leads and going, oh, actually, all of these are terrible, we're not closing any of these. But if you're just looking at the volume of conversions, the cost per acquisition, and the conversion rate as marketers, you're sat there thinking, I'm doing an amazing job, sales are doing a terrible job. So realistically, it's getting that information between the 2 of you going, actually, is the quality good enough? And quite often that'll be from your CRM, all that data, or you just need to manually actually ask people. From an e-commerce point of view, e-commerce goals and metrics are really simple. Essentially, it's very maths based. Fundamentally, any sort of paid advertising, there is the creative element, which is the ads and that kind of stuff, but everything else is actually just a big maths calculation. So for e-commerce, if you look at your conversion rate, your cost per click, and your average order value, they are the 3 metrics that you should care about effectively, because they will impact your cost per acquisition and your return on ad spend. But fundamentally, if you focus on these things, if you either drive up your average order value, if you drive down your cost per click, or you increase your conversion rate, they are the things that will dictate success. For an e-commerce site, I don't really care about impressions. I don't really care about clicks, click-through rate, time on site, bounce rate, anything like that. It would just be fundamentally around those 3 KPIs is the ones that I'd be setting on. Those are the measures that I'd be looking at. And the third one for kind of whether Google Ads is actually right for you is you don't actually have the right budget to be running paid ads. Unfortunately, it's a case of if you don't have a minimum level of spend, you're really unlikely to be able to drive the results that you want. And there's a couple of ways to look at this. The first one is from our experience, Sam has put together these really kind of useful suggested minimums as an ad spend per month you should be looking to run. So if you're doing Google search ads, fundamentally you probably need, depending on the cost per click, around £3,000 per month to have a really good idea whether Google search ads will work for you, whether you can get the returns, and fundamentally to get the data that you need to enable you to make those decisions. So if you have £3,000, you're better off putting it all into 1 month rather than 3 months, because essentially you get the same amount of data, but you can figure out if something's going to work in a much shorter period of time, and then you can see returns in a much shorter period of time as well. So a lot of the time, there's no real point in elongating your budget if you've got a very fixed budget and it's a relatively small budget. Obviously, budgets are kind of relative to the size of a business. The other thing to keep in mind is there is very little benefit or almost no benefit to spreading your budget. If you have a limited budget, do not spread it around 3 different channels or 5 different tactics. You're better off focusing on one tactic, making sure that works, getting the return from that, and then using that as a growth engine to implement other channels and other tactics. So realistically, if you're looking at your budgets, or if you're looking at these numbers and going, wow, we don't have the budget to run these sorts of things, realistically, that might be the case. It might be a case of actually you need to, this year, kind of not use that budget, so you've got a bigger budget for the following year. And then, as I said, perfect a channel and then move on to another one. Don't spread a budget across a lot of different channels to see if you can figure out what works, because that ultimately leads to nothing working. And if you actually want to work out the budget that you require, you can actually work it backwards from goals. This is something that we do a lot of the time. So as I said, any sort of paid advertising is basically just a big maths formula. So if you want to work out the required budget, if you take the required conversions that you want to see from it and your assumed conversion rate, if you divide those two, that gets you the required clicks that you need in order to generate the number of conversions you need. If you then multiply that by the estimated cost per click, that will give you the budget that you need. So if you've got a £3,000 budget and you do that calculation and that comes out at £5,000, at that point, you know that actually the goals that I'm setting for this campaign just aren't realistic. I need to either kind of increase my budget, reduce the goals, or I need to do something with either the conversion rate. And if I can double my conversion rate, that halves the amount of budget I require, or can I drive that from a lower cost per click channel? So at that point, you might be going, actually, Google search is far too expensive, so why don't I do Facebook instead? So fundamentally, if you want to work out the budget, there's a really easy way to do it, and you can work it backwards from your goals. Equally, you can take the budget, you can do an estimated cost per click and your assumed conversion rate, and it will give you how many goal completions you should actually get. Obviously, this is kind of to a lead or to a sale point. You then have to work that forward. If you've got a kind of a service like ours, where you get the lead and then you have to do something with it to close it, you also have to build in that conversion rate as well. So that's all the things that will determine whether Google Ads is right for you. Primarily, it's around budget and making sure it's the right channel. Moving on, issues you can actually solve. So I've given you a lot of issues you can't fundamentally solve. So let's move on to the stuff you can. So the next one, you've actually got the right budget, but you're spending it at the wrong time. This is probably one of the most common things that we come across. People will set a budget and you'll ask them what their budget is, and they're like, oh, £5,000 a month. And it will be £5,000 a month for the entirety of the 12 months. But realistically, not every month in your calendar is equal, or for the vast majority of businesses. I'm yet to come across one that isn't seasonal in some way. Our industry is definitely seasonal. Holiday industry, everybody books in January once they've kind of got Christmas out of the way, or after they've been on their summer holiday. Everything, you need to consider your market knowledge and figure out whether you're spending the budget in the right place. As part of our planning and as part of our audits, we actually look at depending on the month, what is actually the cost per conversion or the cost per acquisition or the return that you're getting. And then you can actually model that and go, if I spent the same amount of fixed budget over a 12-month period, this is a live example that we did for somebody. All we did was figure out if they'd spent their budget in the months that gave them a better cost per acquisition, they could have actually driven 10% more conversions by doing literally nothing else. For a lot of people, like double-digit growth in their conversions would be absolutely great. That could be game-changing, depending on the value of conversions. And all you've done, you haven't optimized an account, you haven't increased the budget, you've just spent the budget at the point when it's most likely to give you better performance. So you can see that down here. So we rank months out of 12. We can do this across kind of elongated time periods. So the more data that you can use for this, the better. So you can see here, November and December, which is obviously the months in the middle of the year, you get this, whichever client this was, I forget now, that's when they should be spending most of their budget. The other one would be March, because they're getting a cost per conversion of 240 to 320, as opposed to up to 500, up to 700 pounds. So realistically, why would you spend budget to get a conversion at 700 pounds when you get 3 times as many if you spend that same budget in the month prior? So that's one of the kind of the pitfalls that people have. It makes it easier for accounting. I don't deny that. If you just go, here's my budget, it's the same every month. Makes it a lot easier for planning. If you've never run ads before, again, kind of the first year, you might need to just have that level budget. But if you've been running ads for more than a year and you're not kind of looking at the results and going, when am I getting my best cost per acquisition? You're just going to be wasting budget. That was very accusatory. I apologise, it didn't seem to need to come out that way, but fundamentally you will waste budget. The next bit, you haven't limited the who, where, when, and how. So I think I've got 2 memes in here. This is one of them. So you're the wrong guy in the wrong place at the wrong time. And in Google Ads point of view, you're also on the wrong device. I think that's a die-hard one. But realistically, again, the vast majority of people that we work with, I've yet to meet a marketer who doesn't have some kind of limit to their budget, even when they're spending £100,000 a month. There is always a physical limit to their budget. So what you're trying to do is increase the probability and increase the chances of somebody converting. In order to do that, for every campaign you're running, you need to be changing your bids and changing the things like, or stopping advertising based on the time of day and the time and the day of the week, the location that they're in. It's very easy to accidentally advertise in the wrong location in Google Ads. They kind of confuse you with wording within Google Ads. So it's you can end up advertising to people Google thinks are interested in the location that you're kind of targeting. They don't physically need to be in it. So there's kind of settings that you can change there. The device, and this will depend on funnel stage as well. So realistically, if you've got a really complex form that you want someone to fill out, advertising against kind of a mobile device is a terrible thing to do, because people won't sit there and be able to do it on a mobile device. So kind of making sure you're using, depending on the funnel stage you're at or what the goal is, make sure you're targeting the right device. You can do bid modifiers based on that. And then the final one is audience segments. So there's in-market audiences. You can say somebody who might be more likely to be purchasing a house or a car, those kind of things. So Google are assuming kind of behaviors based on demographic data that they have and don't show you. You can target by broad industries. You can do remarketing, all sorts of different audience segments that you can do. So every campaign you run, you should be optimizing all of those things. And if you're not, I can guarantee you're already wasting budget. Also, mainly for B2C campaigns, this can be slightly for B2B, depending on what you're advertising. You should also be looking at the breakdown between the age and the gender as well. So you can get that from Google Ads. I find it easier to find a lot of this information from Google Analytics instead. It's kind of the reports are slightly easier. But realistically, what you should be looking at is, when is my best chance? Who is my best chance? Where are they? What time of day and what device are they likely to be on? And I'm going to put most of my budget there. You can trial other bits and you might kind of exhaust those audiences, but realistically, you do need to be doing that. And you can see here all of basically where you find all of those things within the platform as well. Number 6, you're not optimizing your funnel or for your funnel or your audience. I'll be honest, I've run an agency. I trot this diagram out all the time. It's like one of my favorite things. Not everybody agrees with the kind of the funnel approach, but it's something that we think that works really well. So the next thing that a lot of people do is they don't design their funnel, and they don't kind of split their budget across it. So I would say probably 80% of people running Google Ads right now are just going for the conversion at the bottom. They're kind of ignoring the rest of their funnel and then just going, oh, let's put 100% of our budget into these keywords because then somebody should purchase, which for some industries will work well. For other industries where there's a more considered purchase, that's not going to work quite as well. And what you should be looking at is your funnel performance overall and your cost per acquisition overall, not just kind of for individual campaigns. So going back all the way to kind of the KPI diagram that I had earlier, realistically, you need to figure out, do you get a better return on your investment overall? If you're running awareness campaigns at the top, they might not drive any conversions, and it might seem really odd because you're advertising and it's not driving any conversions, but it's actually filling your funnel. And then people are going down to the middle of the funnel and the bottom of the funnel, and actually your cost per acquisition overall will be lower. But you'll look at the kind of the top level, the awareness campaigns, and go, oh, I'm not driving any leads from these, so why am I doing them? You're doing them because you need to get people into that funnel at the top in order for them to work their way down, depending on what you're selling. So the potential tactics you would use at the top of the funnel, I've estimated probably somewhere around 50% of your budget would be a sensible allocation here. The good thing about display is it is really cheap, so you don't necessarily have to put a huge amount of budget in here, but you might do keywords around, so what is car subscription, for example, so a really top level search, really top level educational piece, or things like art degrees. So anybody could probably work out what two clients that we work with here. So or the targeting might be display on these sites or kind of those kind of things. In the middle of the funnel, you would probably then start to use search and performance max. And the example keywords there are things like electric car subscription or fine art degrees London. So it's people who are moving down through the funnel, they're changing their queries slightly, they're getting closer, they're in the evaluation stage rather than the awareness stage. But there's actually research that shows that people will, I think it's 40% of people buy from the first people that they find for something. And that's because everything becomes a comparison to you at that point. So if you get somebody at the awareness stage, and they learn from you what is a car subscription, you built that trust, you kind of built that awareness with them, and then the next time they see one of your ads, you're like, oh yeah, I know who they are, or I trust those people, I've learned from those people, they weren't just trying to sell from me, so I'm going to actually go and kind of use the evaluation from those people as well. So at that point, you might be having kind of keywords like electric car subscription, fine art degrees, and people are very much at that point comparing you to other people as opposed to the other way around. It's a lot easier if you're the base level comparison because they'll see all the positive points that you have and you put across. And then at the bottom of the funnel, you could use search ads, shopping if you're doing e-commerce, performance max and remarketing. And the example keywords might be like your brand name or your company name reviews, just because I can almost guarantee people are looking for reviews about your company, whether that's Google reviews, things like Trustpilot, or they're just looking for people who've written about you. So if you can advertise on them as well, and kind of realistically, you could send them to your pages on case studies or testimonials or that kind of thing, that can really help at the conversion stage. It might be a very specific product keyword that they're looking for, so Kia Niro EV subscription. Or something like University of Arts London Open Days. So at that point, if they've already seen you in the awareness, they've already seen you in the evaluation, the likelihood of them buying from you is dramatically increased. So if you're assessing the funnel overall, you're going to get a much better result. So the other thing is these don't all need to be paid channels. I showed this diagram earlier and it had all of the other tactics that you could use. So it might be that you've looked at your funnel or your audiences and gone, actually, we're really great at the awareness stage, we're really great at the middle of the funnel from other content and other tactics we've got, but we're actually missing out, we just can't rank for Kia Niro EV subscription, so we'll bid on that one. But all of the other tactics that you're doing are filling that awareness and evaluation. So you can almost have a kind of a spreadsheet where you've got what content have I got for the awareness stage, what tactics, and is that working? If all of those are yes, you can ignore that from a paid point of view. Similarly for evaluation and similarly for conversion. So it might be that actually you just need to run awareness campaigns on display. You don't actually need to get into this conversion stuff with your paid advertising because other parts of your business or other parts of your website or other tactics are already hitting that. Moving on, number 7, you're focusing on the small things and missing the big opportunities. So again, I can't resist a meme. So there's a lot of the time, and it's incredibly common. There are lots of things that you can do to landing pages, like changing the color of a call to action button. But realistically, if your ads are then also missing every unique selling point that you've got, yes, you can change the call to action button color. It's going to have a minimal impact. The other thing that you actually should be doing is adding USPs to your ad copy, and that will dramatically increase your performance. This might drive a 1%, this might drive a 20% increase. And why I say this is obviously depending on how much you know about sports or optimization or that kind of thing. There's kind of the marginal gains theory that became really popular because the Team GB track cycling team used it and did amazingly well. 1% kind of improvements are absolutely amazing if you've already massively optimized everything else in your campaigns. If you haven't, then doing the 1% stuff is really a bit of a waste of time. There's bigger gains that you could be making. So 1% activities are things like keyword optimization, looking in search query reports, doing negative keywords, pausing ads, doing bid adjustment tweaks. You may as well do 5% activities instead of the 1%. These are things like pausing campaigns, creating new ad groups, doing new ad creatives or new ad copy, adding a new offer in, optimizing your landing page. They might give you consistent 5% gains every month. But if you're doing them, why don't you do the 10% activities instead? So the 10% activities, if you've not done them, why don't you do new campaigns for a new audience? Why don't you test new bid strategies, remove tactics that just aren't working? If display isn't working for you, you can drive a huge improvement in performance just by removing it. There's budget reallocation. So I showed earlier, like moving budget around in different months. That's the sort of thing that I've already proved it could do a 10% gain. Basically, I've just modeled the data. Or doing landing page optimization. So they're kind of 10% activities. And if you did that, you're then taking yourself from this blue line down here to the yellow line at the top. But why do that when you can just do the big ticket items instead? So for a lot of campaigns that we take on, there are huge gains to be made almost immediately. You can do it within a month. And so big ticket items are, why don't you add in a new tactic? So if you're doing search, Google search, why don't you try Performance Max? We've driven some really amazing results on Performance Max. For the right client in the right industry, it can work amazingly well. You might introduce a new offer. So if you're an e-commerce brand, like, is there a free shipping offer? That might just be a big thing that you can add in straight away. You could create entirely new landing pages. Stop trying to optimize what you've got. If what you've got is bad in the first place, you can spend a lot of time tweaking it, or you can just bin that and start again and create something a lot better, or you can restructure the account. There's ways to optimize an account where you can drive significant performance gains just by having things kind of organized better. It stops Google bidding, kind of like wasting clicks, wasting budget, showing the wrong ad for the wrong keyword, that kind of thing. So realistically, you should always be looking for the big ticket item. Most accounts have a big ticket item that they can do, that they can trial, that they can test, that they can implement. If you can't do any of them, find the 10% stuff, find the 5% stuff, and then start fiddling with the 1% stuff at the end. The vast majority of the time, I can almost guarantee people there will be 10%, 5% increases or big ticket increases that they can do. But I can predict that they'll be kind of down around the 1% stuff. Number 8, your campaigns aren't learning as you've gone too granular. Since I started digital marketing a long time ago, the fundamental approach for how you create a Google Ads campaign has changed. Google are getting a lot better at the automation and things like that. So realistically, you need to give them the space to let them fly, basically. So previously, best practice, and you read all the blog posts, and it would be have campaigns or ad groups prospecting, which is a broad match modified or phrase match, and then use the exact match campaigns once you've identified those keywords, move keywords into a conversion campaign. You'd have single keyword match type campaigns, ad groups with really granular keywords. You'd have manual bidding strategies, because quite frankly, the automation that Google had at that point was absolutely abysmal. So the more control you had at that point, the better it was for you. That's now switched around. Realistically, you need to embrace what Google can do for you, because that's A, where they're pushing their product anyway, but B, it's also what's driving the best results. So this sounds like a really stupid thing for an agency owner to say, but realistically, the ability that we have is we're really good at kind of creating the accounts and using the automation that's there. It's not to say that we're not doing anything, and the value, we have value to that experience and how we set up those accounts and how we then optimize. But realistically, now you should have phrase and exact match in the same ad group. You should be utilizing responsive search ads. I might be about to get this wrong, and Sam might throw something at me, but I think I would say it's 16 headlines and 4 descriptions.
Close. 50.
Close, I think 50. I was one out. So let kind of Google, give them the options, try different headlines, try different descriptions, and let them kind of test for you. Testing different automated bidding strategies. A lot of people are kind of quite wary about using automated bidding strategies, but they can work really well. And just by changing them, you can get a huge increase in performance. And also making sure every conversion has a goal value. I mean, fundamentally, that probably would have been good for the old approach, but you definitely need it now as well. And if you wondered the exact kind of structure that you should be using, Sam put this great diagram together for me. So obviously, most businesses should have one account. We've got some that have more than one account. It's really annoying. You should then have multiple campaigns per account. And within those campaigns, 1 to 6 ad groups. Each of the ad groups should have ideally fewer than 15 keywords with 1 to 2 ads, and then at least 1 landing page per ad group. And it depends if you want how much testing that you want to do. So fundamentally, that should be a structure. Again, if you're looking at your account, or if you're looking at this diagram and going, wow, that's not my account, you're the sort of person that could be able to create a huge gain in performance by structuring your accounts like this. This is effectively what will work for you and will drive performance. Number 9, you're not experimenting with bid strategies. These are all of the bid strategies as per Google. So if you're running a conversion-based campaign, it's these 5 here. We've crossed a couple of out because, quite frankly, they're terrible and we advise that you don't use them. All of the other bid strategies are worth playing with, and it's about using them at the right time and considering your funnel as well. So we've had clients before where we started off advertising for like the actual sale at the end of their funnel. And Google is optimizing around that and trying to drive performance around that. What we did was we switched to actually get them to optimize the first kind of micro conversion point instead. And what we saw, because they were driving so many more micro conversions, we actually saw the number of overall conversions dramatically increase, the quality get a lot better, because we were asking Google to focus there, not there. And it just worked a lot better. So those are the sorts of tests that you can run and go, actually, rather than focusing on a sale, I want to get as many people as I possibly can do to download this white paper, join this webinar, sign up for an account. And then everything else comes from that. Once someone's signed up for an account, obviously you've got so many options to then market to them in other ways. But just by driving the volume there, you probably are going to drive the volume at the bottom of the funnel as well, as long as your funnel is good. So you've got things like traffic, maximize clicks. Again, most people should be in the conversion stuff, and awareness. There's all sorts of different things that you can try. So target impression share, the cost per 1,000. You can have a target cost per 1,000. You can have a maximum cost per 1,000. You can maximize clicks. As I said, most people realistically should be spending a lot more time kind of number one, and just try these different things. The thing is, we could advise one. I know we've ruled one out, but it's just rubbish. But we could advise one of the others, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be right for your campaign. But you need to test all the others to make sure that they are right. And number 10, a lot of people would just set up an account and you've just let it run unchecked. You've not optimized the assets. So here is, like in the next 2 slides, I've basically summarized what we do on a daily, weekly, monthly and quarterly basis, and what you should probably be doing as well. So the daily stuff is those checks. They're basically checks and urgent optimization based on what's actually happening in your account. So there's a lot of stuff that can be done manually, and there's a lot of stuff you can do with automated scripts. And the primary purpose is to catch issues as quickly as you possibly can. So you should always have a checklist of those. The next checklist you should have is a weekly checklist, and that's reactive performance improvements. So this is just to make sure that daily, make sure nothing fundamentally terrible is happening to your account, or look for some really quick wins. The next one is actually, what is the performance of the account? And what do I need to do to optimize that performance of the account? So it's still in the reactive area. The next step up from that is monthly. So what you're looking to do on a monthly basis is the larger performance gains. And these should be planned actions, not reactive actions. So it should be things like doing budget amendments, changing bid strategies, changing landing pages, implementing new campaigns, going into a deep dive. You might go, you know, this month I'm going to look at all of my display campaigns. Next month I'm going to look at all of my search campaigns in more detail. Just plan that out, because it's all well and good, and a lot of Google Ads is reactionary, but you also have to be planning, what am I going to be doing this month, this quarter? And that moves on to the quarterly one. So the quarterly activities are strategy-based performance gains. So everything in here is about performance. The final one is basically going, what is our strategy? What's working? What's not working? What do we need to do in the next quarter that we've learned from the previous quarter or the previous couple of quarters? So each period, you have a set number of things that you should be doing, and you need to be doing all of those things over that period as well. So that's the 10 issues, my quickfire bonus issues. Number 11, you've ignored your quality scores. They're hidden away within Google Ads. This is one of the optimizations, and one of the things where I said it's really easy to set up an account. It's really more difficult to set it up properly. So you actually have to go and activate these columns in the reports, go into the columns button here and turn them on. Quality score basically dictates how much you're going to have to pay within the auction. So the actual position of your ad is determined by the maximum bid multiplied by your quality score. So if your quality score is 1, you have to bid 10 times more. You physically have to pay 10 times more than if you've got a quality score of 10. Their quality scores are dependent on individual keywords, and they look at landing page experience, ad experience, and the expected click-through rate. These things, the first 2, landing page experience and ad relevance, are the most easy things to optimize. It's basically making sure you've got the keywords there. So you can see the cost per conversion for 10 out of 10 quality score is £47. For 6 out of 10, it's 171. And there's to prove that my point doesn't always work. There's another 10 out of 10 there, and it's 532. That's just the wrong keyword, probably. Your display campaigns are appearing on apps. This is why I hate display campaigns quite often. So you can see here, there's an awful lot of clicks. None of these people were at any point interested in the service or the product that was being offered. I can't remember which one it was. These are people who are accidentally clicking on ads in games or that kind of thing, or kind of doing it so they get free credits in whatever game it may be. These people will never buy from you. Google activate this automatically within your display campaigns. So, and the only way to get rid of it is to actually go through and manually exclude all of these things. It's an absolute pain, quite frankly, for want of the politest word I can use. And the final one, oh no, there might be another one I forget, is you've listened to the Google rep or allowed automatic optimization to be running in your account. Google reps we get called by all the time. Ironically, I think one of them is actually calling me now. You have to remember with Google reps is fundamentally, they just have a checklist of everything that Google want you to be running on your account. They can offer you some useful advice and insight, but realistically, their main goal is to generate more revenue for Google. It's your performance is a secondary conversion. I don't think I'm doing a disservice to Google at that point. They are there to make money. They've got shareholders. They also have the ability to automatically add things into your account if you don't tell them not to. So when you see boxes like this, these are all of the recommendations that they're giving you. By all means, have a look at these recommendations, manually check and make sure that they're right for your account. But you do actually have the ability to stop them recommending and stop them auto-applying stuff, because they will auto-apply things into your account if you're not careful. And that can really kind of derail your account, because you might not have even noticed that they've done it. So to find out, you just go into recommendations, you hit the auto-apply up here. And these are the options that you have, and they will be trying to auto-apply things if you don't stop them doing it. So there's some fairly obvious big red crosses here. These are the ones that we would never allow Google to do to any of our client accounts. There are ones that you can test, and they are worth testing, but you need to do it with caution. You need to monitor the impact that it has. But realistically, for most of the campaigns we run, we will just go and stop them doing any of these things as a matter of course, because anytime that they've done those things for any of our clients, it has not gone well, basically. So make sure that Google aren't automatically applying things. And then the final one, if you are working with an agency, one of the things that we quite often see is people aren't checking to make sure their agency are actually doing something. So if you aren't aware of it, within Google Ads, you can go into the change history. You can actually see what actions have taken place over whatever time period you want to put in. And it's worth checking that if you're paying someone to manage your account, they are making changes and automations to the account. Google do have a tendency to bundle things up into weird things like budget changes or bidding changes or that kind of thing. But realistically, you need to be going in there and going, is the person that I'm paying to optimize account actually doing something with the time that that I'm buying from them effectively? And it's sad to say that there's some agencies out there that won't. Basically, depending on the management fee you're paying them, you might just get pushed to the back of the queue and they're like, oh, you know this, but I know this person's not going to notice if I didn't do anything. So I won't do it, basically. So again, it's sadly a common thing that we see with taking over accounts. We go into the change history and be like, has your agency been doing anything for the last 6 months or whatever? And sadly, sometimes the answer is no. And we finally get to the Q&A section. So hopefully everybody's followed along with that, and hopefully it was useful to people. Does anyone have any questions?
It was brilliant, Matt. Thank you very much. We've had quite a few questions come in already. Anyone who's got anything they'd like to ask either Matt or Sam, now's the opportunity to do so. So just type it into the Q&A panel or Q&A button at the bottom. First question for you, and I'll bring you into this, Sam, because you've been waiting very patiently throughout. So first question is, I've tested Performance Max and I've found that I just get a load of spam clicks and spam form fills. Are there any settings to consider to avoid this? And this might tie back to your point 13 there, Matt, but Sam, if you want to speak specifically about Performance Max and any settings there.
Yeah, so I would go and check the locations first to make sure that it is people in where you want to be targeting and not people in or interested in, but also really utilize the audience signals that you can do within the asset groups. So make sure that you've got you're giving the Performance Max campaigns as much information as possible. So with the demographics, website data, so you can do a bit of remarketing through it, custom segments, that type of thing as well, to really try and make sure it's got everything that it can do. Performance Max learns from the data it provides, and the more quality data you can provide it, the better. So with the forms and stuff, make sure you've got capture forms in to reduce spam leads, because otherwise, unfortunately, it can sometimes optimize for those types of leads, just because that's the data it wants to produce as many conversions as possible. So yeah, main thing, check location, audience signals, and make sure the forms aren't too easy to fill in.
Thank you very much. Matt, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, just do everything that Sam said. because that's a great answer.
And that's what he'll do as well. Good.
Yeah.
So next question. How do you optimize for search terms where the search volume is low? Start with you again, Sam.
So what we've got to do is make sure that the search volume that you do have and can show to, you're making it work as hard as possible. So make sure that your ad is really talking to what the customer's issues and pain points are, and that you provide a solution for them, as well as having a really strong landing page. Things to look at would be also to see you say your search volume is small. Is it because you're calling something internal, like a system, one thing, but most of the people elsewhere in the world call it something else, and you're not targeting what people are actually searching for? Things like that I've seen where companies go like, oh yeah, this is what we call it internally, and it's like, yeah, but no one else calls it like that. So no wonder the search volume's low. See if there's other ways people are searching for what you offer, and like whether it's more problem based as well.
Thank you.
The other thing is, sorry, David, you could always go up a keyword level, basically. So if your keyword is relatively long, if it's literally you're not advertised, Google won't let you advertise because there's not enough volume. You might need to go up a keyword level, but you've got to appreciate that people will be at different stages of the funnel. The cost per acquisition might be higher than what you're ideally targeting, and the quality might not be as good because you're going to have to be filtering out either with your ads or your landing page traffic that isn't just relevant. And quite frankly, people will click on your ads even though they know it's not relevant. It's a really annoying feature. So you can go up a level, or it might be that because I've seen it before in some industries, there's just not enough search volume. It's a new industry. Google is great, and kind of SEO and PPC are great, but they can't create a market. If nobody's using a keyword, you can't force people to search for it using SEO or PPC. So it might be that you need to look at a different platform instead.
Thank you. There was a similar or related question asked by the same person actually, which is how do you optimize for search terms that are specific and sort of generally use language in an industry? So my interpretation of that, and the example I would use is you could search for Salesforce optimization or Salesforce optimization, the brand name Salesforce, or actually a Salesforce of people, and how you would go about ensuring you're not wasting budget and clicks on the wrong search intent.
So
go on, Sam.
So what you could do is use your audience targeting segment. So depending on the industry and everything like that, you can do things like, instead of just having observational audiences, actually do targeted audiences based on industries, what people are searching for. But with that, it will heavily reduce your search volume, which may not be a bad thing if it's hitting the right audience. Another thing would be use an awful lot of negative keywords to try and reduce the amount of the irrelevant traffic. We previously had a client that had their company name was also a normal word that you would use in everyday situations, and the amount of negatives we had to keep, it was a frequent optimization. We would have to go in, remove things like that to just try and improve the quality, and Google learns by the quality of data that you can provide it. So by adding those negatives, it did improve and know who to start to show the ads to more and more the right people. But yeah, audiences and negative keywords will be your best friends.
The other thing to consider is actually when just go and Google something, if all of the paid ads and all of the organic results are talking about the other thing and not what you're trying to advertise, it might be the case that you just don't advertise against that particular keyword. We do it because we do SEO as well. We do it in SEO quite a lot. We'll look at kind of the keyword and go, are these people looking for the service that we're trying to offer? And if it's a no, we will probably ignore that keyword, even though the client thinks it's an important one. We had one, for example, I think it was storage solutions. We were working with a self-store company, but the issue was every Google was showing IKEA, Argos, Wren kitchens, all of those things. So even if the user uses that keyword, a quick scan, they'll go, actually, this isn't relevant to me, and they will manually change their keyword to something else. So it's trying to figure out if the search intent is just wrong when you Google it, what keyword, what modifier would somebody put on there? So in David's example, they might spell Salesforce as a single word rather than 2 words. So is that the term that you bid on, or just consider those things.
Thank you. I've had a few more come in. It's just, I'm aware of the time, so unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be able to cover all of them. But what we'll do is respond to them separately. Once the webinar's finished, we'll drop everybody an email. So I'll just run through the last one then. Is there a way to remove unwanted conversions from your Google Ads account?
So I'm just having, because it was a fairly long question, it's about you don't want to be using things like page views and stuff like that. Within the settings within Google Ads, you can put things as a primary conversion to target and a secondary conversion to target. I would look at doing that. So form fills would be primary. This is what your campaigns will be optimized for. Fortunately, you can't go back in data and delete it from previous, but this will then allow Google to optimize for the goals that you want. Alternatively, things would be assigning goal values to different and like prioritize it in prioritization order. So top one form fill may be worth 100 points to you if you can't put monetary values to it, but then a phone call may be worth 5, things like that, to just give Google an indication and understand which conversions you want to target will help improve your overall performance.
I haven't seen the question, but also if it's on reporting, you can combine the data with GA data instead and use the conversion data from GA. It's not quite as effective, but if it's a reporting question, you can do that.
But if you had a rash of just spammy form fills over a period of days, you can just ignore those or remove them from the reports then.
Yeah, put a note within the dashboard, like within your Google Ads and analytics, so that you know when you go back and look at the data 6 months in the future, you know, okay, that was generally spam leads as well, so it doesn't skew what your future plans are.
But yeah, this flies in the face of every conversion rate expert ever, but making your form more difficult to fill in and more difficult to spam is also a really kind of positive thing you can do, especially on your paid landing pages. It's not such an issue on kind of general landing pages or on your website overall, but if you make your paid one very difficult to spam, that will help you from an optimization point of view.
Great. Thank you very much. And unfortunately, that's all the time we've got for today. But thank you, Matt, for your presentation. Hugely informative. Okay. And thanks, Sam, for sharing your expertise and answering the questions today. And thanks, everyone else, for joining the webinar today. I did mention at the start, we'll be sending around a recording of the webinar and a link to download the slides later on. If you do think of any other questions, drop us a line and we'll be happy to help. And as you do leave the webinar, I mentioned at the start, if you're interested in receiving a free pay-per-click audit from Common Ground, just select the option on the form as you leave on the exit survey, and we'll be in touch to arrange. So thanks everybody for attending, and hope to see you on our next webinar shortly. Thank you.
Thanks.